This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor, and today we've got stories to cover and great guests to speak to about those stories. The three things we're going to cover today paint a very clear and very alarming picture of what happens when the tools of national security get turned against Americans at home. What we are talking about today. First, that the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, showed up at an FBI raid on an election office in Georgia. We're going to talk about that today with Sue Gordon, the former deputy director of national intelligence during the first Trump administration. What it means, not just in the immediate, but potentially what it means for the midterm elections. Then we will talk about the quiet expansion of ICE's spy powers from an absolute bombshell report today out of the Washington Post. And finally, we will talk about all things Minnesota. What is happening right now with the federal deployment of ICE agents in Minnesota, what has happened with personnel changes, and what comes next nationwide. So let's get into it. Our first story today that we're going to discuss with our guest is that yesterday, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard was caught on camera by Reuters at an FBI raid of a local election office in Fulton County, Georgia. Let me say that again. The nation's top intelligence official, whose job is foreign espionage, was physically present at a federal search of a domestic election facility. That's not normal. That's not routine. That's not a small break with precedent. But here's the key point, folks. We don't actually need to guess why this might be happening, because Donald Trump told us. Earlier this month, Trump said publicly that he wished he had, quote, seized ballots after the 2020 election. And he claimed that he had the authority to do it. Now, this was in an interview with the New York Times where he was lamenting that he hadn't taken that step of going and seizing the physical ballots in places where he said the election was contested. But here's the thing. His claim that he would have had the authority, well, it's not true. Donald Trump didn't have the authority. And I know that because I was one of the people who helped write the executive order he's now twisting to justify that fantasy. Trump and his allies point to something called Executive Order 13848. That order was written after Russia interfered in U.S. elections in 2016. And the purpose of the whole thing was to make it easier to sanction foreign actors who meddle in U.S. elections. It was not written to recount votes or rummage through ballots or seize voting machines or anything like that. And it certainly did not give the president of the United States domestic law enforcement powers over elections that he didn't have. You can't do that in an executive order. All an executive order is the president saying, here's how I'm going to enforce existing law on the books. In fact, the order went out of its way to say the opposite. It stressed that keeping intelligence agencies out of political and legal decision-making around elections was important and says nothing in it that creates new authorities. Our guest today will have something to say about that because she was one of the people who also helped write it. So when Donald Trump says he should have seized ballots, he's not describing a legal option that he simply passed up. He's describing an illegal act that he wished he'd committed and now appears to be trying to retrofit a legal excuse for today. And now we see FBI agents executing a warrant tied to the 2020 election materials, and the director of national intelligence is on site. One little footnote here, folks. Not enough media outlets have reported the fact that the FBI leader who was stationed in Georgia was just fired by the administration the other week. We can draw some conclusions about why that might be. Perhaps it's because the individual refused to carry out this raid. We don't necessarily know that yet. But this whole thing raises two deeply troubling possibilities. Either, one, the intelligence community of the United States is being pulled into a domestic political operation, which would be an extraordinary abuse of power. Or two, officials are trying to manufacture some kind of foreign intelligence pretext to justify the involvement in U.S. election infrastructure of America's spy agencies, which would be a massive violation of the spirit and possibly the letter of the law itself. Either way, friends, this is a flashing light. That's why we were talking about it this morning. That's why we were talking about it last night. That's why we're talking about it tonight. Because once intelligence agencies get drawn into these domestic election disputes, that line between national security and partisan politics, it just vanishes. And that's how democracies get hollowed out from the inside. With that, I want to bring in my Defiance.org co-founder, Xander Schultz, into the conversation before we welcome our guest. Xander, it's every day you could say 5-alarm fire, 5-alarm fire, but I think literally seeing the nation's spy chief in a baseball cap seemingly trying to hide the fact that she's at a raid of election offices sounds about as spooky and Orwellian as it gets.
Yeah, we still don't have our impeachable offense alert that we need to create for this show.
That's true. That's true. We do need that.
It is a daily occurrence. Usually we're very oriented towards what can we do here, right? Usually, yeah. I've heard a lot about impeaching Trump's various leaders. Usually I dismiss that because of the partisanship we see in DC. But Trump gave a lot of Republicans a hard time, especially Georgia. And I just wonder if maybe this whole using, your international spy capacity domestically could be one of those things that cross that chasm across, it doesn't need to win over the whole Republican Party, but across enough different individual Congress members where we can actually start thinking about impeaching someone like Tulsi.
Well, look, this was something that, a lot of folks were worried about going into a second Trump administration, how he might abuse the spy agencies. We've seen the intelligence community politicized in a lot of different ways already in this administration. But this is an especially concerning one because we're now talking about the possibility that those agencies and their unique authorities of foreign espionage are being brought in some ways to spy on Americans. Is something I'd written about in my most recent book. Is I talked about how John Kelly was worried that Trump wanted to direct him to launch warrantless surveillance even on his own staff members. That was very jarring to him. Of course, John Kelly wasn't going to do that. And of course, people like our guest today weren't going to authorize the carrying out of warrantless surveillance operations in the United States. But Donald Trump has a different team now. And he clearly has someone willing to breach these norms and customs to go show up at a domestic FBI raid, even though her remit is foreign espionage. So I don't know, a lot to unpack here. But without further ado, let's welcome our guest. We have with us today Sue Gordon, who was the principal deputy director of national intelligence during the first Trump administration. Genuinely, don't let her tell you otherwise, a legend in the American intelligence community. Democrats, Republicans, independents, doesn't matter how they vote. People who work in the American intelligence community revere this woman, revere this leader, and we are delighted to have her with us today. Sue Gordon, welcome to the program.
Great to see you all. Great to see you.
Great to see you, my friend, and on such a slow news day.
I read this, and then I read your article, and then I did some research, and so much to talk about. The first thing I'm going to say is we're going to talk a lot about laws and rules and authorities and what can and can't be done, and that's important. Now, what I hope we're going to talk more about is why those are super important. Yeah. And why the listeners, it's not quite to what to do about it, but it is that this isn't about arguing about the laws, in part because what we know about this president, especially in this term, he doesn't really care.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just going to do it anyway. So we'll cite those, but I think there are a lot of important things about this. I did.
You want to dive into that? That's a great place to start. Like, why are these rules and norms so important?
Yeah. So I did a podcast yesterday. I think I released it maybe on Tuesday of my understandable insights. And I stumbled across a line that I think is really important. And that is precedent is set by what we excuse, not by what we celebrate. If you put that lens on this moment, this is really alarming because we are excusing a lot. So, why is it important? Well, let me go ahead and start with the authorities. Tulsi Gabbard does not have any domestic authorities. Her authorities are very special and have to be protected because they allow the intelligence community the reach it needs in order to protect America, right? But if you want to know how much we guard against their misuse, all you have to do is think about what this administration was worried about with 702 and incidental collection of U.S. citizen data when we were trying to go against known or suspected terrorists known to be overseas who were planning to do harm. Right. So,
well, and can I pause there for a second, Sue?
Sure.
To bring the layman up to speed on that, and you were way more involved in these debates. There was a huge debate.
That's my nickname, by the way, Sue. The layman.
Layman. Yeah. There was a huge debate.
Well,
in the first Trump administration.
Then I'm feeling really good about the layman, because if the layman is as smart as you are, Xander, listen, I do warm up exercises just to be good enough to be in front of you.
It's because we're sponsored by Chick-fil-A. Defiance Daily, sponsored by Chick-fil-A.
No, you are not.
We'll probably get sued for that. It'd be great for the cause.
It would be.
So here's what I would say is, for someone who doesn't know about 702 and these, let me just boil it way down. There's been an almost multi-decade debate in Washington about the ability of the intelligence community to do relatively simple things if it's suspected a foreign bad guy crosses over into U.S. territory and he's either in the U.S. or his or her communications are transiting U.S. networks. And so there are these, think of it as just sort of legal carve-outs to say, if that person is physically present in the United States, yes, they're covered by the Constitution, but they're a foreign enemy and threat. So we still need to be able to very quickly find out what they're saying without inadvertently capturing the protected communications of American citizens who are protected by the United States Constitution. So
but it is a legal process to be able to do that. Right.
Exactly.
So you may catch that. The way you're going to catch them is when they're overseas, because those are the authorities.
Yeah.
When you believe that they have transited, then there's a legal process by which you can engage our domestic law enforcement in order to be able to pursue them using that intelligence. But we are really super protective of the intelligence community not using its authorities on American citizens. We just are, intellectually.
So let me just say, with all of that in mind, to orient folks, in the first Trump administration, there's this huge debate about these legal procedures when something may even risk touching an American's communications. And it almost blew up. The intelligence community almost lost this power and lost parts of this power, because of
two or three votes. And if Dan Coates weren't such an effective senator, and he went down to the floor and worked his magic, we were a minute away from having the authorities that have saved us over and over again.
Saved lives, all of that. Now, I give you that context because that was a huge debate involving hundreds of people across the national security community, across Congress, to do a very specific thing to allow the intelligence community to engage rightfully with U.S. citizen protections. Now, the head of the intelligence community is apparently just flying into Georgia and participating in FBI raids on election offices. It's without anyone that we know of debating it, without Congress being made aware. This is like it's like we spent years etching the perfect brick to put in this wall, and we agreed on it. And then in the second Trump administration, Tulsi Gabbard hops in a Humvee and just drives it right through the brick wall. Like does some, big scarier thing with these authorities. So like a fascist Kool-Aid man.
And again, it's the intellectual dishonesty of then it was bad, now it's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Kyle Rittenhouse can have an AR-15 without being registered. Alex Brady can't, right? So it's just look at that. It's what we're excusing. And again, the U.S., one of the coolest things about us is we can make whatever laws we want to, but you have to go through the process by which you have it, and then you have to execute those laws without privilege. And that's, I think, what we're seeing right now.
To your point, Sue, about like we are what we'll tolerate, or that's where our edges are. It seems like almost like ICE policing Americans was a warm up to this, right? That's another group that has pretty strict authorities as to what they can and can't do. That's really limited to kind of immigration enforcement that has been effectively policing, millions of Americans in cities throughout the country. Yeah. This feels like another example of that. It's very strict authorities around what this group can do. Yeah. Now kind of going over the top, and it's a bigger, more robust muscle in some ways, the CIA. Did we lose Sue?
Did we lose Sue? Sue, oh no.
She got hit with the spinning wheel.
Oh no. Okay, we'll pull her out.
CIA's here. They've arrived.
Maybe she can rejoin the studio. If Sue can hear us, she could leave and rejoin the studio, and then we'll bring her back in. While we're waiting for her to come back in, Xander, I will say this, and I want to ask Sue this when she comes back into the chat, which is this executive order that Trump and his flunky lawyers from the first administration think gives them the power to meddle in elections. So let me take you back in time. It's 2018, and we've got a midterm election coming up. And a lot of us who worked in the Trump administration in the national security world said, those bad guys in Russia, they love what they did in 2016. They think they really screwed with us. I bet they want to come at us again in the midterms and in the next presidential election. And we have to make it really damn hard for them to meddle in these elections. And one of the things we should do is send a warning shot. We should have the president sign an executive order that says, you fuck with our elections, and we're going to sanction you to death. We're going to cut off your economic sources of wealth. We're going to shut down your visas. We're going to blacklist you. So that's in a nutshell what went forward to the president in 2018 was this order to send a warning to the Russians. That order, all it did was say the president's going to put sanctions on bad guys if they meddle in our elections. A couple of years later in 2020, you get some of these loser lawyers surrounding Donald Trump who say, that executive order, maybe we can twist it to say it allows us to go seize voting machines. Because how will we know if the bad guys interfered if we don't get our hands on the voting machines, which is stupid logic to begin with. But that was their starting point to saying, maybe Donald Trump has the authority to go seize ballots and voting machines. It's wrong. It's crazy logic. And I think Sue's back with us. And I want to ask her about it says Sue needs to connect her mic and camera before we can add her to the screen. You get to be
when Mercedes is gone. If people are wondering, we lost Mercedes for the day. Our producer's out for a few days, and so we said we've got it. Okay, kind of that overconfident. Like, why do you even think you need to show us how to use the controls? And now I'm sitting here. There's a lot of boxes. There's so many boxes in the screen. Mercedes is going to see this and say, I knew I should have tapped in. He's never going to take a day off again. It's the end of it.
Never going to take a day off again. While Sue might be connecting her devices, I will just round out that thought, Xander, by saying this was bogus from the start. There were news stories in 2020 about Trump thinking he could go seize voting machines. But it was evident to anyone who even went to that website to read that executive order. It's public. You can go read it. A layman, back to you, Xander, can go read that executive order and say, this doesn't sound like a document that gives the president the ability to seize ballots. But as recently as the other week, he came out and he basically re-upped that claim. And now, probably not coincidentally, the FBI is going and busting into the place, Fulton County, where Donald Trump and his minions had alleged all of this fraud and tried to overturn the 2020 election. This is scary shit.
Yeah, this reminds me of there's a famous statement that kind of goes a few ways, but it's fascism is militarism turned inward or imperialism turned inward. And we're starting to see that, right? Like we just had your buddy on that was a CIA operative saying the reason he got out is he was seeing a lot of the stuff that he was tasked with doing in Iraq starting to take place at home. This is another example of that. And so unfortunately, hey, Sue's back.
Yeah, I've got technical skills.
Welcome back.
I've got.
Well, look at that. Now we're on mobile. Sue,
this is new media.
Take us for a walk outside.
I'm sorry. So, let me see. Where was it? Where was I?
Well, I was when you jumped, Sue, I was putting a question to you, which was, so tell us about this claim, right? Trump claims he's got the ability to seize ballots because of this executive order that a bunch of us co-wrote in 2018 to give him the ability to sanction bad guys like Russia for meddling in our elections. It doesn't give him the authority to go seize ballot boxes because you can't give yourself that authority in an executive order unless you already have that authority under the law. The president doesn't have that authority unless you know something I don't.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. But again, that's my point that I made at the top, which is that doesn't seem to matter to him. Now, the courts, by and large, have, when he does these things, are able to step in and stop some set of bad things from happening. But imagine this happens on election day. There's no time for the courts.
Yes.
That one. So let me just real quickly, because I'm an intel officer and I'm kind of a geek about that. Let's talk about what's so bad about this.
Yeah.
There are three levels that it's bad. The first is just straight up leadership. What the hell is she doing there?
Yeah.
Like, what is she going to bring to it? There is no function. Even if all the authorities were in place, the DNI, she's got no craft. She's got no skill. She doesn't know what she's doing. She couldn't identify a foreign interference from an animal activity. I mean, there's just nothing. So functionally, even if she had authority, you don't do this. And this tendency for these leaders at the highest levels to insert themselves into things is a really bad optic. One, they don't tend to know a lot when they get in front of a microphone, but more than that, they aren't the ones with craft. Hell,
well, you essentially filled this administration with podcasters and like TV hosts, right? So this is like what we can expect when that's like their instinct
even more than
is
that.
to go in front of a camera.
Yeah, but even in just straight up. So let's say I'm a career intelligence officer. I know what I'm doing. I might have some craft, but my craft isn't as good as the craft of my moving men on every issue. And so just her presence there cannot have any real purpose. And so then it leads to the second. The next is she's an intelligence officer. Miles, you said it really well. And it's why you wrote the executive order the way you did, and the reason it was coordinated in the community is you really want to protect that independence. And more than that, the skill of intelligence is induction. This sounds too nerdy, but I'm just going to say it. Induction is you look at what is, and then you try and understand that. It is not, I have a theory of a case, let me prove it, because intelligence by its nature has so much uncertainty around it. But when you do that, you cannot help but instill bias in the thing. So just from a straight up protection of why intelligence, when done well, is so incredibly valuable, because it is just a reflection of the best assessment of what is and an understanding of what that means. It is not. And a great example is, what was Tulsi Gabbard doing involved in any of the discussion of Anthony Fauci?
Right.
He wasn't her employee. She has no say over whether he did it well or badly. And even the question of using the intelligence community to prove something, that just isn't what intelligence does. And so when you corrupt it, you have now, just as a craft, you said, okay, now I'm throwing away its independence. I'm throwing away its value. And I'm just saying it is no different than anything else that says, let me prove what I want to believe. And when you take that take that away.
Well, Sue, can
And
I?
then the
No,
sure.
go ahead, Sue. Go ahead. If you,
I want to know the third one. I'm like on
yeah,
pins
the
and
third
needles
one.
on the third layer.
sorry.
Yeah, you're like, if that's where you're going with 1 and 2. So, and the third one is just the continued erosion of the institution,
Mm.
right? Be- Because all institutions are predicated on this notion that you do the work and then you show the boss. You don't do the work the boss tells you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And put aside any nefarious intent, one of the reasons why you do this, why diversity is so important, is because it gives you the best chance to have that tension against someone showing their work and someone judging whether it meets a standard. When you corrupt that, you just do it. And so who's going to be there? Didn't we just lose another head of the National Intelligence Council? You know, first we lose Mike Collins, now we lose this. I mean, where are the people that really understand the differences here? And so the institution itself is made weaker when a leader inserts themselves at the wrong level and in the wrong job. And it just takes away the advantages of the tension that difference provides. And intelligence is certainly different.
Miles, it's reminiscent of your executive order, which is basically, look at that guy. I don't like him. figure out something. You know, this whole like, I know what the ends to be. Go figure out the means. Like, you know, strategy, top-down strategy has been how this administration has functioned from the beginning.
Well, and you know, and I'd also say, I mean, you know, Sue, you could paint a scarier picture than me. The thing we always felt like protected us from the American spy community being used against Americans was certainly the law, but the law is only as good as the awareness and willingness of the people to enforce it, to carry it out, to protect the rule of law. And so it was the people in the intelligence community. I mean, when folks would ask me after Trump administration won, you know, could he have done that thing that John Kelly was worried about? Could he have spied on Americans? And I'd say, you know, like, it would be exquisitely hard for the president of the United States to try to get the FBI or over, you know, the CIA to go, you know, surveil American citizens with, you know, technical means, because there's all these layers you got to go through. And that's the pain in the ass. That's why conspiracy theories tend to be bogus, is because people presume it's easy to keep a secret in government. It's not. And you got to convince all these people, lawyers, operations people, and the guy who's doing the wiretap, you got to convince all these people to do this thing that's obviously illegal. But here's the gigantic asterisk, is that if you deliberately go replace all the people, well, you're going to increase your odds of getting a yes, sir, at that request. And that's what's really alarming here, is we've seen not just the top echelons of the Trump administration filled with loyalist bootlicking flunkies. We have seen them undertake a concerted effort to go recruit loyalist bootlicking flunkies to go into career jobs as well, not just the political jobs, the jobs where you're being asked to go type on the classified keyboard the person's name and phone number to monitor them. I'm not saying that's happened necessarily at the CIA and ODNI, but you're seeing it with ICE. You're seeing them recruit ideological loyalists to come into ICE, into these law enforcement jobs, not because they're qualified to be cops, but because they're qualified to be mega MAGA. So that's what's really worrying to me, Stu, is that this perhaps is an indicator that this type of thing is happening in the intelligence community. It's easier for us to see when it's ICE, because that's a law enforcement agency that doesn't live in compartmented channels. But we don't really know how the intelligence community is operating under this administration, because it lives in the shadows.
We don't. And we don't know what, well, we do know about the Venezuela assessment in Trinidad.
Yeah,
we do know what the intelligence community assessment was, and then those people were fired, and then it was repudiated, and then we went and did what we wanted to do anyway, right?
Yep.
Pretty much after that, we don't know. We haven't seen hearings. We haven't heard a justification of the blowing up of the boats and what the intelligence basis was for those. I mean, it's just you worry, but I think one of the things I've talked about that I think the combination of a president that actually believes he knows more about everything than anyone and who does not value the strengths of a bureaucracy.
Mm.
And listen, we were in it, Miles. We hated how slow the bureaucracy was too. I mean, we would have gotten rid of layers and stuff like that, but there is a strength of that slowness. And that combination for him in his first administration, he couldn't overcome it, but man, did he hate it. As evidenced by the people that left midterm, and then what you see now. But the problem is, America, policy agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Policy agnostic. This isn't good. Right? That bureaucracy, that process makes things repeatable, transparent, and fair. And I'm here to tell you that serves all of America. It does. It means that if you want to change, if you want to affect, you must affect it within the structures that we have. If you want a different structure, then you have to take the time to do that in a reasonable way. And we're seeing this over and over again. What is it? I'm going to pay Americans $2,000 out of the money that I get from Venezuelan oil, and it's in an offshore account, and it's not going to go through appropriations because it doesn't have to. Trust me, that isn't the way it works.
So if a
Except
private company
it
was
does.
doing something like that, it would sound fishy and corrupt and prosecutable.
Right.
It's the president.
Right.
It's the president. Can I ask you as well, Sue, about what this might mean for the midterm elections and what Trump might be doing in general? And I will say, without belaboring the point about this executive order that they may not be using as justification, I remember when there was back and forth inside the U.S. government about this executive order in 2018 that, you and folks in your shop were treading very lightly about the intelligence community even being mentioned. And folks like me over at DHS really actually wanted the intelligence community involved because the idea behind this order is we were like, hey, you guys over at ODNI and CIA, you tell us if bad guys have interfered in our elections, and then once you certify that, yes, they have, then we'll go sanction them. And you all rightfully had a lot of concerns about playing a big role in that process because you were aware of and respectful of the constitutional limits of your role in a domestic situation like an election.
The limits of our craft. I remember it like it was yesterday, Miles. It was the 2018 election that we were, really was the one in between 16 and 20 where we were really scared that we hadn't done enough work to prepare ourselves after 16 to be able to do it. But when we started writing these rules so that we would know what we had, one of the questions was, okay, the intelligence community will decide if there was interference. And we're like, no, we will tell you whether the extent of the information we have about foreign interference. It is not our craft. It is not our authority. It is not our reach or our job to then look at what actually happened in the elections in order to determine whether that happened. So it's, and if you want to know why these guys are all seized about, that somehow the intelligence community lied about being Russian, trying to influence the U.S. elections, it's all on this notion of can you assert that they interfered in an outcome determinative way, and we just didn't want to be involved. So to now do this is just like, you just don't understand. And again, let's just talk about elections are about being binding, right? They like the great promise, the great agreement everyone makes in an election is anyone can run, but the loser agrees with the outcome, not agrees with the outcome if it's the one they want. And so this little microcosm with Georgia, which I don't even know how they got a judge to see a predicate for the warrant.
Yeah.
But this
Well,
little
I mean,
microcosm, we know how it's gonna work out. There just wasn't anything there. I am concerned as all get out that he has the original ballots.
yeah.
But the real issue is it's setting up this notion. When you say, "Do you believe that? Yeah, are you gonna accept the results of the election?" He's gonna say, "Well, it depends on whether I win or not."
I mean, and that's the thing that people worried about, among many things, about the president, even talking about seizing ballots in 2020,
Yep.
is because once that happens, once something like that happens, I don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican in the White House, once a White House of the opposing party goes and takes ballots somewhere, all trust is gone after that. No one is going to believe what is said in those ballots. That's why elections in this country, by virtue of the Constitution, are managed by the states. They're managed locally. They're not managed by the federal government. It makes it very hard for that type of thing to happen, which is why this image, this is the Reuters picture, this image of the U.S. government's spy master, right there, the person responsible for spying on bad guys and foreign enemies all around the world, instead being in a tractor trailer with boxes of U.S. ballots, is fucking terrifying. I try not to drop a lot of F-bombs on this show. Why on earth is that person in this place? Even if she wasn't doing anything illegal, Sue, even if there was nothing nefarious happening, which I don't believe, even if she was literally just on a tourist visit and happened to stop by while the FBI was raiding, it would be a tier 1 controversy of the highest order, because now that this has happened, trust in our elections, if it was already bad, is shredded, because every person on the planet that you might even say is a crazy conspiracy theorist is going to say, well, look, now the CIA is involved in playing with our ballots. May or may not be true at this point, but that image wrecks public trust. That alone is reason she shouldn't have been there. But I worry that it's for deeper reasons, scarier reasons, is that they think they now have the power to go muck around and put their hands in election boxes around the country wherever the president says, I'm mad because I don't think I got enough votes.
On the flip side, you gotta give her props. She looks exactly like I would expect a spy to look. If you told me that was off a Netflix show, I would believe you.
We can laugh about it, so we're not crying.
Look of a Jack Ryan type spy.
I just can't. How about if you be good rather than dress up in a
they're
costume?
all cosplaying though. That's the whole administration. Sue, can I borrow your immense brain power and skills to red team this a little bit? Like,
I'm ready. I'm in.
What can we do? Like, we have a lot of tools at our disposal as people who drive collective action, pressure, sitting Congress people. We're able to fund some efforts. We're like, we could do a lot, both Defiance and the larger ecosystem. What as someone who sat in a seat similar to this, how do we put pressure on these people? How do we upend what they're trying to do here? What would you recommend? Use those spy game skills for the good guys right now. What should we do?
Well, one, I think some of the things you're doing are really good. You're creating written products that articulate exactly what's happening. What you wrote today was so far beyond. I mean, good on Mark Warner as the ranking member of the SISI for coming out and saying it. But yours was really good. So number one, we've got to create stories so that people can take it, and you did an excellent job with data, and I think that's good. Number two is, I think Congress is teetering on the possibility of being responsible.
And what are you seeing that makes you say that?
The willingness to repudiate members of this administration in the most stark terms. Don't get too excited. But there are things. I would put a massive campaign on Congress to say, so here's what I'm worried about. We know this administration either malfeasantly or incompetently lies all the time. We know that one of the things that's important about elections is the chain of custody, the original ballots. Those are now gone. The chain of custody is broken. What's to keep them from saying that those original ballots, we've counted them again, even though they've been counted several times, and they say something different? So I would put a lot of pressure on Congress. I would put a lot of pressure just on the DOJ. I know they're involved, to say you must. I don't know why they have original copies. You can, but why aren't they working on copies? And so I think there would be a lot to do to preserve the actual ballots themselves, and to find a way to not allow the people that seize them against the authorities that they have to be able to be the ones to tell us what they say. So I think those are three near-term things. My worry, those are all legal process standard things. I wish we could find a Republican congressman that hadn't decided they were going to resign.
Yeah, that Miles and I talk about that all the time. It's like, why not go out on your shield? This whole thing that you can only be brave when you're not running for re-election. It's also a poor, it's a poor assessment of the situation. Also, like I was just talking to I'm not being name droppy here. Sorry, it sounds weird. I was just talking to Mark Ruffalo the other day, who was so frustrated with.
Of course you were.
Yeah. He was so frustrated with the Hollywood elites.
Didn't you talk to him last week, Miles?
He wouldn't answer. He was on the phone with Xander.
Oh God, I knew this was going to happen. I tried to sanitize it by calling it out, but anyways.
Well, Sue and I used to work for the president. We worked for several presidents, Xander. Anyway, go ahead. Tell us about your actor friends.
That doesn't have the same cachet it used to.
Yeah, totally. It is crazy thinking about you guys in the Trump. Now, like, honestly, you all deserve flowers because, like, we didn't understand how much was being held back. Now that we have a bunch of sycophants in there, the amount of, defense that you guys were putting on for all of our sakes, we can all see now what that looked like and what you were all being asked to do. So it's
big mistake though, right? We chose the wrong side. We should have been stuck with the dictator, because like when you're the dictator's enemy, it's real scary.
Yeah.
This
goes back to the point I was making.
I just gotta say something on that, Xander.
Yeah,
so remember where you were. And that is, we didn't think we were harming anything. We thought we were doing our jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So this miscasting of things that impeded things as though they were humans that had decided that we didn't like the president, that isn't in our DNA. Yeah. We swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States that prescribes a president. But we still, no matter what his authorities are, we still had our responsibility. So if I could do one thing, it would be to counter this notion that the people in the first administration were trying to harm him. We were trying to do our jobs and affect what he wanted in a way that was consistent with the Constitution and the best interest of the American people. And
I can't tell you how many times those conversations, I'm sure it was this way for y'all, Sue, when you and Dan Coates had these conversations, but I can tell you how many times for us, those conversations were about, we need to keep the president from doing this because he's going to get impeached. Right. I mean, like, that's what I want MAGA people to hear. I wasn't trying to take down your president from the inside. There's not an ability to do that. There wasn't a deep state that's like, let's try to take him down. We're trying to keep your man from getting impeached. We're trying to keep him from breaking the law. He kept trying to do that. You shouldn't be surprised that he kept getting impeached. I mean, there's this great, anyone ever remember the movie Liar, Liar with Jim Carrey? There's this great scene where a guy calls and, the assistant says to Jim Carrey, it's so-and-so on the phone again. He's knocked over another ATM machine, and he grabs the phone and he goes, "Stop breaking the law, asshole." And that's his advice. That is basically what sums up the entire first term of Donald Trump's team giving him advice. Stop breaking the law.
Okay, back to you, Xander.
Sorry, back to you, Xander. We derailed you, man. Did you have a comment?
In short, all I was saying is, when I was talking to Ruffalo, he was upset that how the Hollywood elite weren't standing against him. And he's like, I've never gotten more work in my career. Like, this fear is totally made up. Like, what will happen to you if you speak up? I have more fans than I ever have. I'm getting better work. I'm in more interesting projects. We've seen that in every different sector, that when people speak up, they are rewarded for it. There's like this almost like this false narrative that probably happened during those early capitulations, that standing up against Trump would hurt you in some way. It only hurt the people who capitulated, and so I'd
just
love to
look
see
at Minnesota. Listen, I love America.
Yeah.
I say this every time. It's why I won't tell the American people what to do. I just try and tell them the consequence of the actions and the choices they need to make. It's what you all are trying to do. Here's what you can do. But if you need a little courage, just look at Minnesota.
Totally. I guess yesterday.
And they have had an effect. Listen,
Yes.
Homan is going to be as bad as exactly who he is. I think Trump sometimes has better instincts than the people around him, that it wasn't going well. Don't think that intellectually or emotionally he didn't like it. He didn't like what it was doing to him. But for anyone who needs a little courage, you can't watch Minnesotans standing up for each other and not have courage to do the thing that you need to do, particularly the powerful people.
Hell yes.
We had a guest on yesterday that said it was also notable how quickly that happened. It's not like Minneapolis had this like long-standing infrastructure where the community would turn out with 50% of the population in the streets every 2 weeks or whatnot. This came together really quickly and really effectively. And it was just good. Sometimes I say we're building new muscles in America. It was good to see how quickly, when the American people feel threatened, they can build that muscle. And when they feel locally threatened like that, they can stand up so effectively against tyranny. You don't know until you see it. And you're right. It's completely inspiring. I now believe it can happen in other American cities. I don't think Minneapolis is entirely unique in the ability to do this. And they've taught us a lot too. So we don't have to invent it from scratch. It is super inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, so one other thing in that vein, Sue, I do want to ask you about is there was a bombshell report today in the Washington Post about all of the domestic surveillance tools that ICE has acquired, including since my time at the Department of Homeland Security, and it was pretty scary stuff. I mean, I urge folks to go read the article. I'm not going to sum up the whole thing. They basically go capability by capability. And you finish reading that piece and you come away with the view that an ICE officer empowered with all of these tools on his or her Android phone has the ability to do iris scans and take pictures of Americans and identify them from their cars and track their license plates and see where they're going, see where they've been, predict where they might be headed, read about their whole lives, add them to internal watch lists to be able to track information. It's like almost a laundry list of all of the things we debated after 9/11 publicly and in Congress about doing and decided not to let the government do without warrants. And it's kind of like ICE can do all of those things now. I mean, there are some legal nuances, a lot of them, to those different capabilities there. But the big picture from that piece, I haven't seen anyone sum it up as well, is sort of quietly over the past couple of years, ICE officers have become this all-seeing eye and have these capabilities that we never, ever wanted an individual federal law enforcement officer to have without oversight.
Yeah. We didn't get everything right after 9/11, and we saw the effects of when we allowed government privilege to escalate, and it broke some trust that I think we're still paying for
100%.
now. But the other thing to remember is there is a big difference from these tools being used by Best Buy to know what aisle I am in, to send me we know that you wanted to buy Call of Duty 11,000. Go get it. It's in the aisle you're on right now. And the government having this privilege. The power of the government is so massive that's why the framers basically described what they couldn't do rather than giving it to it. And so There is no way that these agencies, particularly under this leadership, with their limited understanding of their responsibility, not their ability, their responsibility, is able to set the rules and training and policies around it in order to be able to ensure that it doesn't turn into exactly that. And all you had to do was see that reel, the Instagram reel, of the guy taking a picture of a woman, just who was, observer. And he said, "I got you. I'm going to put you in my little database." Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is
Yeah.
that going to go? Is that going to affect her ability to get a job? Because that guy said so. Is she now a domestic terrorist? Is she going to be able to get a mortgage? Is she going to be stopped at border? Is she going to be able to get on a plane? So this idea of unconstrained government power, as though because it exists technologically, that it's okay for the government to use it. I don't care what their righteous mission is. This idea of an all-powerful the power is so immense when it is casually applied.
Sue, can I ask you to go on one thought exercise with me? When you all were focused internationally in penetrating certain localities and trying to understand what was going on there, what was effective that they did? Like, what can we learn from the folks who maybe frustrated you the most? If we're saying this is militarism turned inward in some ways, what did more resilient communities that were able to, evade and dodge or were harder to crack than others? What did they do effectively?
Well, first, let's look at the people who were effective at exerting their power over others. They didn't have any constraints. When the president said in a I don't know, some interview that he had, and maybe it was Maria Bartiromo was talking about Chinese penetration and intellectual property theft from companies. The president goes, "Oh, we all do that." No, we don't. There are rules.
No, we don't.
And so the first thing is, when you look at why the really nefarious people are able to do what the really nefarious can do, it's because they have a permissive structure that allows that, because the society is designed for the benefit of the government, not the benefit of the people. And so that's what happens. The resilient ones are the ones that are closest to the threat and feel it personally. So if you look at, say, what Ukraine has done during the Russia conflict,
sure,
what they have done to protect their infrastructure is really profound. What Taiwan has done in order to counter the influence campaigns to be able to do it. So the ones that are closest, and then you have the little smug Americans who think that for some reason, because we're the best, and that all the stuff we have is what we have because, I don't know, we have it, not because we've worked for it. You see us being affected profoundly by those who would do us harm. We have created this really great environment right now for information operations against us. Yeah, listen, our adversaries can just amplify all sides.
Sure.
They don't even have to pick a side.
Yeah, they don't have to pick a horse. They don't. They intentionally don't. Yeah.
Well, and look how well it's working. So, let me give you a stat. And this is not to say that Russia or China are necessarily responsible that as a country we are at each other's throats. However, there is substantial evidence to justify the fact that they've helped a lot. They've done it in to great effect with very limited resource expenditure. And the stat that I would point to is this past year at the end of 2025, it came out that 1 in 3 Americans now believe political violence might be justified to get the country back on track. 1 in 3 Americans. Sue, do you know what else unites 1 in 3 Americans? 1 in 3 Americans have a cat. If you are a visitor to the United States and you come and shake someone's hand, you are just as likely to be shaking the hand now of someone who has a cat as you are someone who believes it might be necessary to kill their fellow American to get the country back on track. It is crazy that sentiment is now so ubiquitous that it's 1 in 3. Like, that's how alarming the polarization has got from, in part, foreign adversaries magnifying our differences.
For sure. And Xander, you asked what people should do. I love Americans using their voice right now. I do. It's time. And what I encourage everyone to do is to recognize that this is not a political thing. This is something from which we won't recover if we don't stop the erosion of the rule of law and the processes and the policies and demanding the leadership. I mean, listen, I'm not a big fan of the leaders of these agencies right now, just in terms of their abilities. But we had a Congress that just kind of rubber stamped them. Their job was to do the advise and consent piece. So, anyone won't do. The stakes are too big. And again, all the things that over the past 20 years, and this isn't a recent thing, over the past 20 years that we've all like, oh, I can do whatever I want. I can make as much money as I want. I can take as much foreign investment as I want because I want it, because all this is going to be here. This lack of understanding of all the things that we enjoy because of these pesky rules is something that we need to start seeing. And that is, it isn't okay just because you believe in tough immigration. What ICE is doing in terms of the preservation of rights without privilege. So I just think the last is, I love that America is speaking up. I think it's the most powerful thing we have. I don't know that it's as fast as some might want it to be, but it will matter.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about the speed, you mentioned Ukraine, what they done. To your point, it's oftentimes when you start feeling the threat, though. It's, not everyone, Sue Gordon, is at home with your background that can kind of see past what's happening in that given moment, or can see where it can, devolve into. And now we are seeing people that now no longer have to jump to any sort of conclusions. They're seeing it with their eyes on television. Americans murdered by mass secret police. And so that bravery is really starting to pick up with the everyday people who are, for the most part, just going to work, living their lives, and hoping to continue to do so. And so I think you're right. I think the American people are ready for this moment as they understand the risk. They're increasingly not only making their voice heard, but starting to go beyond that. Right. I think there was a while, maybe in the early 2000s, we were like, we'll send out happy tweets and, and whatnot, and that'll be enough. That's how our activism works. And we're now entering a phase where many Americans have called congresspeople now for the first time. Many Americans have marched for the first time. Many Americans have boycotted for the first time. And so when we say voice, that voice term is starting to be more metaphoric for the litany of actions that certainly Defiance members are taking, but people across the country are taking. And we're all learning.
Well, I gotta tell you a cool moment in that regard, Xander. As I was racing back to get on the live stream today, I wanted to just get a quick update of any news that I missed, which we totally didn't get to most of the news we were going to talk about. I can't wait for our producer Mercedes to see this episode. She was like, she's going to realize I keep you guys completely on track every day. Totally. And she's like, she leaves one day and we fall apart.
We just hung out with Sue for an hour.
But so I'm riding, in the car, and I'm on with, I pop on with GPT, and I'm like, hey, give me a rundown of the news I've missed in the last 3 hours. And GPT's running through the news, and I was like, just focus on everything related to Minnesota, because we were going to talk about Minnesota today. And you know what I loved, Xander? My GPT was like, one of the biggest stories driving the conversation this week is that a nationwide group of local prosecutors has banded together to warn the administration they will prosecute federal agents for overreach. And I was like, GPT, that's our story. Our Defiance.org members made that happen. And I know that's silly that I was like excited that my robot read back to me that was happening. But like, that's an example of how the Defiance is working right now. I mean, we talked about this all day yesterday. I don't want to toot the Defiance horn, but I mean, that happened in 8 days. The Trump administration is doing dramatic things week over week over week. We've got to be able to respond as quickly. Yep. And we're getting that speed. We're getting that battle rhythm. A week ago, a guy told us who's a Philly DA, hey, there's no nationwide network of prosecutors sharing best practices. on how to charge federal agents who've actually broken the law and exceeded their authority. Boom, this week it now exists, it's happening. The opposition is starting to keep up with the speed of this administration, and I think that's a very good sign.
Yeah, I heard, I can't remember what show it was, the Council of Mayors, all 200 mayors from around red, blue cities. And the chairman, Republican, was talking about it. I was buoyed. I really was, by the bipartisanship, the things they were come out with, the things they were talking about in terms of their responsibility to their citizens as mayors. There was a really fundamental understanding that at the end of the day, this is about everyday people. And so, I think there are signs. I really do. I think, have we talked about Davos together? I think there's a good conversation to be had between, that's kind of an external mirror of what we're seeing internally, and what you're seeing is our foreign leaders saying things that are not casual like President Trump says, but are actually very well thought out foreign policy positions that ought to concern us to no end.
Yeah. Well, Sue Gordon, I have to say, there's no one else we would have gone so deep into overtime with than you. So glad.
Mercedes, I'm so sorry, Mercedes. Let me come back. Let me come back.
It is wonderful to have you here, my friend, especially on a day like today. Really, any day, I'd have this conversation with you. Sue Gordon, I will say, anytime we have you on, we always hear from our listeners, our members of defiance.org. Man, she is a wealth of wisdom. People love having you on this program. So grateful that you were able to join us today, my friend. I hope you're willing to come back very soon to help shed some light and optimism on what we're experiencing.
Anyway, anytime, Mercedes. I'm super sorry. Xander, I still say, if you're a layman, we are in great shape as a country. Anyway. Love you guys.
Yeah. Well, that's
because
Gordon,
thanks for joining us.
I don't know what's going on. It's to see.
It's
to see me. I don't call it
up.
Thank you, Sue. Love having her on the program. I think
Sue's another person we whiteboard with. We just like we did with Krasner, a weekend whiteboard. Go spend a Saturday.
Yeah, dude. When you asked that question, when you were like, "So Sue, what ideas do you have about things we should maybe do?" I was sitting here thinking, Xander, please don't spin up another effort. We have a whole bunch of things that we're already doing. I was like, man, you're gonna kill me.
As a serial entrepreneur, there's like literally something like there's launch week sickness. If you hear me sniffling, so true. Well, let's do this before we bow out, Xander. I mean, we missed all of our marks and our cues in this show, but one thing I would say to folks is, look, if you do actually want to do shit about what we were just talking about with Sue, that's what our members are talking about doing this year. I think one of the top priorities we were told by members of defiance.org to focus on in 2026 was protecting our elections. And, in the first month of this year, we've already done one of our missions was focused on that. So every single week we announce a mission, a real action to push back against the craziness. And week before last, it was to go fund one of the biggest rising independent media organizations in the country, Courier, to go expand its operations in key battlegrounds all around the United States, key midterm battlegrounds, to make sure, in particular, that voters get accurate information about the election. We know one thing Donald Trump's going to do, in addition to apparently putting his grubby little hands in ballot boxes, is he's going to lie to people about their right to vote and engage in voter suppression tactics. And so our partner Courier, because defiance.org members are helping them fund this expansion, is going to go into those key battlegrounds and make sure they get accurate information about the election. That's one of many things that we are planning to do this year to push back. So I would urge folks, jump over to defiance.org. You can sign up for our updates for free, but consider joining us, consider becoming a member to help us go do that. We do these things as a club collectively. That's the whole purpose of this, is to go crowdsource defiance against this administration's actions. Xander, you look ready to tell me something. No. I'm looking at the. I asked if people had questions, so I was just looking at the questions coming through. On
all right, we'll
Substack.
take some questions. But before we take a couple of questions, should we tease the video?
Please do.
Another thing we'll probably get in trouble for doing. So you guys saw that yesterday. We mentioned that we helped launch federaloverreach.org. So this group of prosecutors around the country who are willing to go hold federal agents accountable who exceed their authorities and violate the law, not harass them for doing their jobs, to go after the ones who are breaking the law. We helped stand up this coordinating mechanism to make sure those prosecutors can share strategies, because people are frustrated. People are pissed off that they're seeing videos, not rumors, of ICE agents breaking the law. They're seeing video proof of ICE agents breaking the law, and they are seeing no accountability. They're not seeing these people arrested for shooting folks in the back. They're not seeing people arrested for folks kicking down doors and saying they don't need warrants when they do. They're not seeing consequences, and local prosecutors have had enough. And so yesterday, federaloverreach.org launched. I urge folks to go take a look at it, sign up for their updates, support that effort if you can. We gave them yesterday a $20,000 grant from our organization to help get this thing off the ground. And we just got in a video that they have cut that will help them release, I don't know, sometime this week, maybe next week at the latest. And I want to play it for you if I can. And of course, Xander, I'm gonna maybe get this right. Let's see. There we go. Let's see if this works.
Germany.
He said he doesn't have to show a warrant.
How can I relax? You just killed my neighbor.
You raise your voice, I raise your voice.
I've had enough.
Enough with the warrantless arrests.
Enough with the illegal home entry.
Enough with the violent assault.
Federal officers do not have absolute immunity.
They do not have permission to break the law.
And they do not have the right to violate your constitutional rights.
And they certainly do not have the unchecked power
to deprive you of your life and liberty.
I am a prosecutor.
I am a district attorney.
I'm a prosecutor.
I am a district attorney.
I am a district attorney.
I am a prosecutor.
And we're coming together from around the country
to fight against federal overreach.
FAFO will not tolerate these abuses of power.
We will work together to make sure federal officers
uphold the law in our states and cities.
Where federal officers break the law, they will be prosecuted.
No one
is above the law.
Learn more about us at federaloverreach.org.
You've had enough,
and we hear you.
I think that's pretty cool.
I literally get goosebumps watching it. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we've wanted every leader to say. Even if they did,
Yes.
It's nice that the district attorneys actually have the legitimate power to do something, but that's the tone we've wanted to hear from every leader thus far, right? And it's so nice to see elected officials not only taking that tone, but showing a willingness to act. And I do think DAs, local DAs are the right people for the job in this moment, especially when it comes to the occupation.
Yeah. And look, there are, as we heard from Larry Krasner, I mean, there are limits. It's not like a local prosecutor can just, go off the rails and prosecute any federal agent. And, there are crimes that if a federal agent commits them are only going to be prosecutable in federal court. And there's all kinds of distinctions here. But importantly, we have seen such systemic abuses that there are a vast array of crimes that are obviously being committed by some of these agents that are prosecutable by these local DAs, and they should be. But this is not something that happens every day. And if people may ask, well, why does there need to be a network for this? Well, because local DAs have not been put in the position for the past few decades of having to deal with masked, armed federal agents swarming their streets, breaking the law by design and challenging the constitutional rights of citizens. That was an extraordinary situation to be in. Now it's becoming such a common situation that there needs to be common answers to and common strategies for confronting that problem.
Yeah, and I was talking to Mike Schmidt, who's the former DA of Portland that we had on, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago at this point. And he was saying one of the barriers to them doing anything thus far is prosecutors are taught, don't bring a case and think in case you can win it, unless you can win it. Don't bring it. It wastes resources. It's going to waste your time, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, we've got to break that instinct right now because we're up against something different in nature. We actually need to bring cases, even if we lose them, just to get the data on how we're losing them, what we tried, what they did in response. And then we need to chat with each other about it. And so this group is making sure they're sharing information about this. They're figuring out how they won. They're sharing how they won. They're sharing how they lost. They're bringing in experts to talk to all of them. They're supporting each other when they have a case. And so this solidarity, and we hope to see this network grow and grow and grow and cover a significant percentage of the population in America. So we have our defenses up everywhere, and our local warriors are as prepared as they can be to protect us. Oh, you're on mute, Miles. Mercedes.
We don't have our boss here to tell us what we can and can't say. I won't name the organization. I won't go too far. I won't scoop something. I will just say the support that we announced yesterday to get this thing stood up, I think has been 5x'd by outside support, maybe more. Mm-hmm. So, we announced like 20,000 in grants. I think there's at least 6 figures in support that's been raised to get this thing moving in just like 24 hours. Don't take that as the official word yet. We'll let FAFO put out a press release at some point in the coming days.
Is back so we can have a cool
we'll wait till our boss is like, you guys, what were you doing? You're leaking things. You're playing the video. Don't do any of this. Xander, could we just put up? You got anything else? Let's put up some of your personal bank
statements. I sent you some of the questions I saw.
Yeah.
Liz says, is there anything to say about the LRAD on protesters and why it was developed? This is the kind of sound wave machines that have been reported to being used on protesters. Miles, wasn't your partner affected by something similar at some point?
Well, I mean, if by LRAD they're referring to Havana syndrome and what happened there, I mean, that's a whole different odyssey. I mean, I'm happy to talk to folks about that. I had an episode, 2 episodes at my house back during the Trump administration where, we later suspected that it was something that shared the hallmarks of Havana syndrome. And I'm more than happy to talk about that if folks want to. I talked about it to 60 Minutes a couple of years ago. But those devices, the sound devices that are being used against protesters, one thing I will say about that, I don't know anything about the technical development of those devices, where that originates. I'm sure that's easy to find. But there was a debate in the first Trump administration that really spooked the hell out of me. And it's one of the things in the early weeks when I came forward in 2020 against Trump, I disclosed because I felt like people should understand how weird it was getting behind the scenes. And that was a debate in the Trump administration about using these devices that are similar in that they are standoff devices that you can use. You point them at protesters or large crowds. They're microwave devices that make your skin feel like it's burning. And it creates this sensation of unbearable pain from burning to get people to disperse. This is apparently some crowd control technique that's been developed in recent years. And there was a earnest discussion by officials at the White House to DHS about trying to get us to deploy these tools to the U.S. border because Donald Trump was so frustrated with seeing videos of migrant caravans coming to the border of people to claim asylum. And I could not believe, I remember the day, I could tell you where this meeting was. It happened in the CBP building, the Ronald Reagan's building, which is where the CBP building is in downtown DC. We sat in this banal conference room and people were talking about deploying these microwave devices at the border. Okay, if you've seen videos of people arriving at the border, you're talking about like women and children. You want to point radiation devices at women and children to make them feel like their skin is on fire? Is that not fucking torture? Now, of course, this was rejected, but that's the type of conversations that were happening, that people were saying, what are you talking about? We can't do that. But there's a team now that surely is willing to adopt those types of egregious measures to bring people under control, to punish protesters. So anyway, that's my aside, on the topic of LRAD. But Xander, you said there were other questions too. Yep.
Guys like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller think they're being like great entrepreneurs, that they're figuring out ways around our rules. Like we always knew there were ways around the rules. It was called everyone practiced mutual toleration and forbearance. They knew the system in general would break if we were just working our way around the rules all the time. And the idea that these guys think they're so fucking clever because they can figure out there are niche ways to authorize torture and hurting people for expressing their First Amendment right. It drives me up the wall. But we are all whatever. We're all angry. That's why we're here. Urban asks, how will the local police apprehend such heavily armed stormtroopers? It's a great question. This is like why we're bringing that group together. We talked about this a little bit with Krasner yesterday, right, Miles? Where we said, look, even if you can't arrest them on the spot, it's great to document an attempt by the local police to say, hey, who was this? Can we speak to him and have on the body cameras of those police officers, have those ICE agents threaten the police with a gunfight or whatnot? Because the police are trying to do their job. They're trying to secure a crime scene. They're trying to gather evidence and whatnot. And so, Urban, I don't want to kind of speak on behalf of the actual prosecutors who can give you a really great answer on that. But part of the conversations we are already having is, how do you document evidence better? We had ourselves in action 2 weeks ago. That was about asking your local police chief to set up an anonymous evidence hotline so people could provide more documentation to their DAs if their DAs do attempt to bring charges against these federal officers. You don't have to arrest them when they're in the gear out in public. Like they don't arrest most, criminals when they're with their whole gang and whatnot too. So I imagine there's a bunch of other answers that the more capable and competent DAs would let you know. But that was my quick take. But it is the reason they exist. These are the questions that they're grappling with, right? That's a brand new issue.
I agree with you. Larry's answer on that yesterday too was terrific, in that he was saying, it doesn't have to escalate to that type of confrontation for it to be effective. Folks walking up with a body-worn camera and saying, okay, I'm a federal law enforcement officer. You're not going to let me carry out my duties. Fine. Now that's documented. I mean, that's powerful.
Sure. Sure.
Star says, can we get FAFO on the Georgia situation? We haven't had any conversations with them about that, Star, but I will say I alluded to that this morning in the article that we put out about Tulsi Gabbard showing up there in Georgia. There's that picture again. Oh, nope, it's not. That's something else. Hold on. There we go.
There we go.
Yep. There we go. There's that picture again. When I saw that photo, that was the first thing that made me want to write the piece this morning, is to say, Trump's henchmen that are out there doing these things, that are getting involved beyond their obvious remit in domestic politics and voting and these sacrosanct institutions, they should be aware that Donald Trump may try to protect them, probably not, but he cannot insulate them from state crimes. And elections are run by the states. Donald Trump learned this himself in the wake of 2020, that he was prosecuted for state crimes, for meddling in elections, including in Georgia. And so as they're undertaking these efforts to try to manipulate the 2024 election, potentially, well, they darn well better remember, Xander, that Donald Trump cannot pardon them from committing state crimes. So with that, Star, I ended the piece with that today, as saying, this may be something for local prosecutors to start looking into. Now, to be clear, do we have evidence yet that Tulsi Gabbard broke the law or any of these people broke the law? No, but I don't need the evidence to know this looks fishy as hell, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's a hell of a lot of smoke here, crazy amounts of smoke, because Donald Trump, always the idiot criminal, has given us years of breadcrumbs to say, I believe the election was stolen. I don't have any evidence of it. Here's made up conspiracy theories. Go find me 11,000 ballots that I need. Here's a place where I want you to go get those ballots. He's laid all the breadcrumbs, and now he's got agents and intelligence officials dispatched to the exact place where he claims there was a fake scene of the crime. So a lot of smoke, probably some fire here. And I would hope that local prosecutors, not just in Georgia, but around the country, are paying attention to this administration's desire to get involved in their elections.
We got a little bit lucky in the fact that, to your point, he is an idiot criminal. Like we got lucky that we were warned for years that he was going to try to do a Viktor Orban type takeover. And it hasn't been that. It's been much more in our face. We got lucky that he loves to tweet everything, to your point, leave cookie crumbs everywhere in terms of where he's headed and where he's going, that all of his stooges like to be in the press and in front of the camera. And so it just makes it all that much more obvious and harder for them to, we saw it with the Preddy murder, that they can't gaslight us to the extent they think they can. And so we're a little bit lucky we're dealing with an idiot criminal here. Miles, anything else, or should we get off the air before we give Mercedes more heartburn? You're on mute. You're on mute again.
Oh, man. Look, folks, we take this fight very seriously. We do. We spend all of our waking hours working on this, but I hope you'll give us a little bit of slack that on Thursday, after burning the midnight oil, getting stuff moving. We're a little slap happy today, and we're down a producer, which means Xander and I, it's like two kids who've been given the seats in the Millennium Falcon. We're just, if I can find the send me to hyperspace button here, I'm going to press it. Anyway,
one's the better choice.
Xander, offline, I'm going to have to tell you, when I was screen sharing that FAFO video, I almost screen shared the funniest thing that would have. Anyway, I'm not going to say it. I'll tell you.
We're disclosing everything else before we.
Nah. This is like an offline. This is an offline. My wife would be so mad at me. Anyway, look, thank you for riding with us today, folks. Please do go check out defiance.org. But more than anything, I still want to emphasize folks should go check out federaloverreach.org. We are still so excited about, dare I say, proud of the launch this week and being able to support this group of prosecutors. I think their ranks are going to grow really fast. Xander and I have heard from prosecutors all around the country who want to be involved in this effort. It's amazing, and we're just also humbled by the support of the defiance.org community for doing real things like this and moving at warp speed. So even if I can't find the Millennium Falcon warp speed button here in the virtual control room, y'all have found it by helping us stand up things like this really quickly. So super, super grateful. Tomorrow, Xander, we've got another great episode. Are we able to say who we've got on the program tomorrow?
Sure. Do you know? I'm flying solo right now. I have nothing.
Oh, no. This is where the wheels come off the wagon. We won't scoop our guests.
You're allowed to say. I can't say.
Join us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Defiance Daily. We'll have more things to announce. We'll have more things to talk about. Thrilled to have you with us. It's been an incredible week here. Just know that because of you, the defiance in this country is growing. We are so thrilled to help in some small way make that happen. And as always, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together. We'll see you tomorrow, 5 Eastern.